With the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on the BRICS members to advocate for peaceful coexistence and harmony between civilizations. The International Monetary Fund released its latest World Economic Outlook. And where is the world economy heading for? And now let's begin with our top story. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on the BRICS members to advocate for peaceful coexistence and harmony between civilizations. He made the call when addressing the 16th BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. The president called on member countries to build BRICS for innovation and act as pioneers for high-quality development. He also advocated for building a green BRICS, saying China is willing to leverage its own advantage to expand cooperation with BRICS countries in green industries, clean energy, and green minerals. So for more on this, joined us on the line now are Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So Yan, I will start with you. So what's your main takeaway from President Xi Jinping's speech, and what's the message does he send?
Right. So I think the speech is very comprehensive. It is also very powerful and promising. So he primarily talked about 5 areas that the BRICS countries should work on. The first one has to do with peace and how to be the defenders of common security. Especially, he addressed the Russian-Ukraine conflict and also the conflict in Gaza, and he proposed, certain actions to, end the war and bring back peace. The second area that he emphasized on is the commitment to innovation and high-quality development. He talked about China's contributions on, technological exchanges and capacity building in that regard. The third point that he emphasized is on the green development and the promotion of sustainable development around the globe, especially in the BRICS countries. The fourth area he mentioned is mostly on the global governance issue, and he advocated for the commitment to justice, and also, BRICS countries should act as forerunners to reform the global governance system to make it more fair and just and enhancing the global South's voice. And then last but not the least, he emphasized on the closer people-to-people exchanges and also the advocate for, harmonious coexistence with the cultural exchanges and cultural understanding that we could all learn and inspire from each other. So I thought this is a very powerful speech, and it really points to the right directions as to, what the BRICS countries and the broader global South should work towards in the near future.
And so, Dr. Zhou Mi, so building BRICS for innovation and act as pioneers for high-quality development. So what could be done to implement it, and how do you explain it?
Yeah, it's very important for us to understand that innovations coming not from nowhere. It should come from the market demands. Where there is some demand for the innovation, there is. I think that enterprises are trying to do more innovation because they can earn more profits. So to guarantee this mechanism to be effective, we have to provide a better, stable, and transparent environment for the enterprises and for the market. That is the regulation. So the correlation between the market and also the research is well established in many developed economies. But we have to try to have a better diffusion of this technology by helping those innovation institutions and also some enterprises to do something to improve their profits by using this technology. So for us, we need to have a very common understanding that innovation is very important for us to address the challenges. No country in the world can do it alone. So we need to try to find some ways to fight against the climate change and trying to settle the problems to do with artificial intelligence, and also to do more to reduce the impact on the environment. We need more common understanding, and we have to go together towards that goal. So it's very important, not only for the developing countries, but also we should gather more efforts. We should expand the markets and trying to make the enterprises to believe that they can benefit more by doing these innovations.
And also building a green BRICS. So Dr. Zhou Mi, so what can China do?
Yeah, the green BRICS is a very new term. I think that in my understanding that we are the developing country, the biggest one, the biggest and much more potential markets. We are in the process of a very fast industrialization and urbanization. So we have so many changes. How can we try to use this technology to improve the quality of transformation from the traditional one to the new one? How can we meet the demand for the environment requirement, and how can we share our technology with other markets? Maybe we are facing some of the disputes in the trade and also the investment areas, and also some of the concerns about the securities. But we need to believe that the green transformation is not only benefiting some country, they are benefiting us as a whole. So we are going to do more. While China is very important in this area, we have a very good pioneers on the new energy enterprises. I mean, for the NEVs, the new energy vehicles, and also for the solar panels, the wind turbines manufacturers. So we are able to provide many these products while together with the services and the solutions for the other countries. We are trying to do that with some of the idea and principle based on the market economy. I think that needs some more understanding with our trading partners, and we can do it together.
So given the current uncertainties in the global economy, how important do you think is it for the BRIC countries, to deepen the cooperation in these different areas?
Right. So I think the cooperations between BRICS countries are really important on two different reasons. One is that, as we know, the global economy now is quite divided, that we have the global north that is still having a large weight in the global economy, and a lot of their economic policies have also outsized weight and influences on the developing countries. So, for example, when the Federal Reserve hiked the interest rate, this directly affects developing countries. Their currency depreciates, their debt burden are increased, and so on and so forth. So I think what BRICS could do together, collectively, would really put a much larger economic counterweight against some of these developed countries. And so what that means is that their agenda, their voice can be more heard in the global stage. And so it would push some of these developed countries to be more considerate and also to focus a little bit more on, for example, policy coordination. So, this is not going to continue to, make the developing countries be vulnerable to whatever decisions that are being made in these global north countries, and also in the international financial institutions that they pretty much control. So I think this is important when it comes to economic governance in the global stage. And the second, I think, importance is that there are a lot of substantive practical level where the corporations could really help. So, for example, we have very fragmented now trading system. Countries are resorting to protectionism policies. For example, recently, the EV tariffs imposed by the United States and also European unions and Canada. So I think it's important for global South countries to work together to develop, cooperations in trade and investment in technological exchanges, so that they are not going to be subject to the kind of exclusive actions by the global North countries. So in terms of, the specific economic areas, I think there's a lot of room for the global South countries to cooperate and leverage on their respective strengths to achieve the common and collective and sustainable development.
So, Dr. Zhou Mi, so do you agree with Yan, or what measures can, BRICS countries take to strengthen their economic and trade cooperation?
Yeah, I mean that market is the main power to decide how the resources can be allocated. For the developing countries, for the BRICS countries especially, we have very large markets, but the market is so diversified. They make, some of them are good at agriculture, some of them are good at manufacturing, and some are in the services. So we have so many rooms to cooperate. I mean, not only for the horizontal levels, but for vertical levels. We can change our method of how can we manage the economies, how can we better use of the technology. We can assure that the flow of the enterprises and by the investment or the trade can be protected. Their intellectual property can be protected. Their profits can be protected. We are able to provide there are so many diversification. For the demand and the supply chains. I think that is quite potential for us to try to make a better use of the resources in our markets, and we are able to provide a better life and also the services and goods to the consumers all around the BRICS countries.
So, Yan, what opportunities do you see for the collaboration in the digital economy within the BRICS framework, particularly in the technology transfer and digital infrastructure development?
Right. So I think, again, China would play a very significant role in building the digital infrastructure in these various countries. So as we know, not only through the BRI, but also through many of these private enterprises like Huawei, for example, when they invest in these various countries, they help to build the digital infrastructure in these various countries. And so that is really laying the foundation, right, for that digital economy and digital cooperation across borders. In addition to that, I think, President Xi's speech also talked a lot about capacity building, providing the training, providing educational opportunities for, the BRICS countries and beyond. I think this would also help them to, really utilize the digital technologies for the economic benefits. And I think in addition to that, the BRICS summit also mentioned the concessional financing from the new development bank, the BRICS Bank, that it will increase its concessional lending in building infrastructure, in promoting, digital economy, because a lot of the digital commerce is done by small and medium-sized enterprises in these developing countries. So providing more financing for them to be able to partake in the digital economy, I think that is also very essential. And then last but not the least, I think, again, technological cooperation when it comes to really the exchanges of technologies, but also when it comes to trade, to provide, for example, cost-effective solutions to telecommunications. I think that is also really important to be able to promote digital economy. So I think, again, this is a very broad range of cooperations from the hard infrastructure to the soft infrastructure, right? So the technologies and then the know-how. I think China can provide a lot of opportunities for all the countries to join together. And again, many countries like what Dr. Zhou talked about, they have their own strengths. Some are very good at agricultural production, but they have a hard time selling their products in a broader market. So I think this would make the e-commerce, the digital economy, really helpful to explore the markets and to really promote trade, investment, and commerce among these different countries.
So Dr. Zhou Mi, so what do you think are the main challenges to collaboration in the digital economy, and how can they be overcome to facilitate the smoother and more effective exchanges of knowledge, technology, and resources?
Yeah, I agree that, for the digital economy, there are so many things that we have to find some solutions. Like for the first one, the digital gaps, how can we guarantee that no matter the big economies, the big enterprises and the smaller and medium-sized enterprises or the individuals, they can beneficiary from this development of the digital economy. We need to provide a better infrastructure for the digital connections and reduce the cost of using that. Well, that is not very easy, especially when you are talking about the countries who have a very large area of land and who are not able to provide enough income for some of the poor families and in the villages. So we need to try to find some solutions to encourage the enterprises to do that for the public benefits. And the second, I think that is important for us to reach some governance consideration. And we have to agree that it is important for us to support the development of the digital economy. Otherwise, we will be left behind. So we need some common rules, like for the technology levels, we need to find some better understanding about the digital signatures and provide some facilitation for the transfer or the import and export of the products. We have to guarantee that who are able to provide some of the digital economies, the enterprises can be protected. And we need to have some definition from the cross-border data flow. So there are so many issues we have to address. And I believe that this is not happen overnight. We need to understand and hear from the enterprises and the market and discuss this with them together.
Well, we're speaking with Dr. Zhou Mi, the Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. And after a short break, the International Monetary Fund released its latest World Economic Outlook. So where is the world economy heading for? Stay with us. You're listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. The International Monetary Fund has maintained its global growth forecast in the year 2024 at 3.2%, consistent with its projection in July. In its latest World Economic Outlook, the IMF said the global economy is highly uncertain. The report also said further intensification of geopolitical rifts could affect trade, investment, and free flow of ideas. So, Yan, the IMF maintained its global growth forecast for this year. So where do you think is the world economy heading for? And what are some of the biggest issues facing the world economy right now?
Right. So according to the IMF, the latest October World Economic Outlook, they maintain the global growth rate for this year on average is going to be 3.2%, which is the same as their earlier projection. Overall, the IMF believe that this year's growth is going to be moderate, but inflation has gone down without a major setback in the economic performance, and they think this is a positive outlook for the economy. But they also identify certain downside risks. One of them, as you mentioned, is the rising public debt, and the inflation pressures do not completely eliminated, especially due to the service sector inflation and also the geopolitical tension and uncertainty in the Middle East. The other sort of the downside risk that they mentioned has to do with trade protectionism, the fragmentation of the global economy. So these could still weigh on the economic growth of the globe, of the world economy. And last thing I think they did mention is that different areas have different growth prospects. So it's quite varied. And so they call for 3 different policy pivots, including, lowering interest rates and have more sort of growth-oriented monetary policy. But they also talk about fiscal consolidation. And finally, they really advocate for the more reforms, structural reforms that would help to enhance the growth potential in the long term.
So, Dr. Zhou Mi, actually, the IMF is warning that the robust international trade is not going to be the economic super engine that it has been, and the punitive trade tariffs that are being adopted by the US, EU, and other countries. This is a big reason for concern. So, what's your take, and how will this actually drag down the global economy in coming years?
Yeah, I agree with you that, in the recent years, we see some protectionism, some unilateralism in the trade regime, and it is really harmful for the development. But if you're looking at the World Economic Outlook of IMF, I think that they are still a little bit optimistic about the recovery of the trade, and they are increased the prospects for the world trade for the next year. So I think that is very good familiar for us to understand that the world is changing, and the global supply chains are in the process of adaptation to the new impacts. So I think that is also mean that the world is very very active, and I think that is also sustainable for us to try to look more, and we hope that we can do more for the trade. Well, for China and other countries, I think that there is also some of the strengths who are able and who are supporting the world trade for the fairness, for the the globalization, and that is also important for us to look at the new phenomena of the change of the trade, and some of these the new energy industries and products are increased for the international trade, and it is also some of the new and the good points for the world trade to recover.
And Dr. Zhou, so what's your take on the IMF report that's saying the global debt is going to approach 100% of the world GDP by the year 2030?
Yeah, I think that IMF is not so confident on the governments who are able to solve these debt issues in the short term, and I don't think that they are just saying that it is a very bad decisions of the debt, because every country need to try to allocate the resources from nowadays to the future. They have to think about whether they can do more to have a a better infrastructure, like for the recent years, to have a better development in the future. So that is not definitely very bad issues, but it need to consider about the the issues of the exchange rate and also the interest rate. So in nowadays, I think that the world is still too diverged about the interest rates by the main central banks. So they are having different interest rate policy, and that is a very big impact for the world's different countries. But for some lower income countries and maybe least developed countries, it is a really big threat for them to have a very large debt. So they need more support, not only by themselves, they need some support from other countries to help them with the debt issues.
So what do you think the rising debt and trade protectionism mean for the world economy?
Right. So according to the IMF, the rising debt is a problem because it reduces the room for, fiscal cushion if any other shocks may hit the economy. But I think we need to be, careful in distinguishing what kind of public debt. So again, for developed countries like Japan, like the United States, they have been, issuing debt in their own domestic currency. So even when their debt is, over 250% of the GDP, like in Japan's case, or over 100% of the GDP for the United States, they are not going to run out of payments. But it could have some political sort of obstacles for the government to continue to use fiscal policies to help the economy. But I think the more important problems are for the developing countries that are borrowing in foreign currencies, which they have no control over with. And so we know that a lot of the low-income countries are spending over 20% of their fiscal revenues to pay debt, external debt. And so, 3.3 billion people live in countries where the debt service is more than what they spend on education or health. So I think this is a problem for these developing countries that are having really high foreign debt burden, that they're not able to really use a fiscal tool to build their own economy and strengthen, their economy. So I think that is a problem. Now, when it comes to fragmentation, the IMF clearly puts that if we continue with the kind of trade protectionism, punitive tariffs, this could cut the global GDP growth by 0.5% to 2026. So that is quite significant when you think about the overall global average growth for this year is only 3.2%. So a 0.5% reduction, it is substantial. And added to that, if we also think about the geopolitical conflict, for example, in the Middle East, this is going to cost another 0.4% growth of the global GDP, according to IMF's earlier April forecast. And that would also elevate, global inflation by 0.7%. So I think these are really the downside risks of the global economy, which is that, when we're dealing with so many development challenges, climate change challenges, if we cannot, really collectively trying to develop the economy, put development first, but engage in these kind of geopolitical tensions and protectionist policies, this is going to cost us. This is going to really weigh down on the global economy and further jeopardize our opportunities to really, reduce the climate change, the threat, and also, to undermine our prospect to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
And again, the IMF sees the U.S. GDP increasing by 2.8% this year. So what's your assessment for the U.S. economy?
Right. So I think the U.S. economy, the biggest downside risk, of course, has to do with the political uncertainty when it comes to, early November, we're going to have the presidential election. So I think what the U.S. economy has been helped was both the large fiscal spending, right, when it comes to the pandemic, all the stimulus checks, also the three major industrial acts that really help to provide a lot of fiscal stimulus to the economy. And then on top of that, there has been large amount of immigrants that are coming into the country, 4 million as Biden took office. And about 60% of these 4 million immigrants enter the labor market. So that really helped the U.S.'s jobs, right, and create a lot more jobs and also productivity growth. Not to mention the AI technology has also really galvanized private investments. Now, none of this, I think, it's going to continue, right, for 100% certainty. So depends on who is going to be in the White House. The immigration policy could change. The AI technology may or may not turn out to be as fruitful as what it's currently projected to be. So I think there are still quite a bit of uncertainties, especially when it comes to the very different economic policies of the current two presidential candidates.
So, Dr. Zhou, for the second largest economy in the world, China has recently rolled out a series of stimulus measures recently. So what's your thoughts on that, and how do you think that is going to play to boost China's economy?
Yeah, I think that for the government action is a very in-time actions. So these policies, the package of policies, are trying to give more confidence for the enterprises and stakeholders to believe that the long-term development is on the track.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.